come out to Eggington Bridge, better known as Monk's Bridge. Until the A38 bypass was built, which is roaring away on my right hand side here, this is the main route north from Burton into Derby, and it's been a routeway for a long time. This is the line that the Roman Rickneld Street followed, and there's probably an ancient trackway here before then. Beneath me is the River Dove, and there's probably a ford here, maybe even a bridge, perhaps a timber bridge or a stone bridge before this one. But any trace of it has been lost when this bridge was built. And it was built about 750 years ago. And it's known as Monk's Bridge because we think the man who built it is a monk from Burton Abbey called John of Stafford. Now, John probably got the money from his father, who owned land at Stretton, and being a monk, he'd made vows of poverty, he couldn't keep the money, and it wasn't unusual to spend the money on public good. It was a kind of heavenly insurance. It made sure that it eased your passage in the afterlife. John later became the abbot of Burton in 1260, so to be a monk, we're probably looking at the bridge being built about 1250. It was probably a very different bridge then. It wouldn't have these parapets, obviously wouldn't have the tarmac, and it was very narrow. There would almost certainly be a cross at one end of the bridge to remind travellers about the dangers of travelling and the need for prayer. There may even have been a bridge monk or a bridge hermit who would say prayers for you. But if you really want to know the full story of a bridge and to understand it, you need to look beneath. From down here, we can immediately take the story back to 1775. This ironwork that we can see, the bracing and the ties, was added then when the bridge was widened. And it was widened by the Turnpike Trust, who were operating the road from Burton to Derby. They'd been around for about 20 years, and they charged a toll on travellers and put the money back into improvements. But in 1775, the Trent and Mersey Canal was about to open. That was going to be competition for the road, so they were keen to make some decent improvements, and they widened the bridge. Before that, you could only get one carriage through here at a time. It was becoming a little bit of a bottleneck. And you can see on this first arch that runs out from the Staffordshire bank that it's rather different to the others. It's a flatter profile, and that's because it was built later. We'd got new building techniques then. This was actually a repair that was made in 1695. If we look at the other arches, they're semicircular. They're what are called barrel arches, and this was something that had begun in church architecture and in the 12th century, and it had been transferred to bridges. And to really understand that, we need to get right underneath and have a look. Beneath the arch, you can really see the story of the bridge. You can see where in 1775 the extension was made to the northern side of the bridge. From here, very clear addition. This is the 13th century bridge. This is back to the original building, and these great barrel vaults were built with timber framing to hold them up. Until the last stone was in place, these weren't fixed, but these ribs were put in to take the weight that was coming down and to transfer it laterally into these great bridge piers. And they're chamfered, and this again was taken from church architecture. In a church with a vault above you, this is ornamental, and it let more light in, more natural light. But beneath here, beneath the bridge, who was going to see it? This has been done by a mason and a designer who was taking a real pride in his work, because although nobody was really going to see this, he's made a brilliant job of carving the stone. So some 13th century mason took a great pride in building Monk's Bridge. I've just come round to the Derbyshire bank now, and you can see it's absolutely thick with this Himalayan balsam which is spreading along the rivers. This is coming, it's a North American plant, it's not native, it's been here for a few years now, but it's everywhere. And I say the Derbyshire bank because the actual county boundary runs along midstream in the River Dove, and that caused a problem with bridges in the past because the counties were responsible for maintenance for much of the time. This is before, of course, they had the Highways Agency and the Department of Transport and the Turnpike Trusts. And there are often arguments then about which county should repair which. And in 1549, these pillars were added, and it's just a cheap way really of trying to prop up the bridge. But you can tell money was scarce because Derbyshire had to provide the money for this repair, and it's said that the money was found by selling a bell from St Wilfrid's Church at Eggington to actually provide the money for the stonework to come up and prop up this Derbyshire arch. These refuges were added in by the Turnpike Trust in the 1770s when the bridge was widened, and they were necessary because the Royal Mail coaches came over here at quite a lick and they stopped for nobody, and this is where the pedestrians could just skip out of the way as the carriages came roaring over. And that's the story of Monk's Bridge, but this spot is actually almost a potted history of transport through the ages. The river was one of the first highways, we've got the ancient trackway, we've got Roman Rickneld Street, we've got the old road, the Turnpike Road to Derby. 100 yards in front of me is the A38 trunk road, the modern bypass, full of traffic 24 hours a day. Behind me we've got the wonderful viaduct that James Brindley built to take the Trent and Mersey Canal over the River Dove. Another chapter in the transport history. Beyond that we've got the railway. Beyond that we've got the River Trent, perhaps the first major highway through the Midlands and the route by which the very first people came into this area. And it's all within a mile. But this bridge is in retirement now, so I'm going to leave it to the fishermen and the swans and the cygnets. Oh, I've had enough of this. Geronimo!